Ahead of Valentine's Day, the petals of the Rose City are not as vibrant as they once were. One of the most visible issues, all the boarded up windows downtown. Fair to say, it's an epidemic.
I mean, people are running out of money replacing the windows, they're running out of patience.
On any given morning, a handful of businesses find their glass shattered in small shards on the sidewalk, with some owners essentially giving up, installing plywood after repeatedly being hit by vandals.
You know, this is a restaurant. I don't think anybody wants to sit in the restaurant that's boarded up.
So what's behind this, and what will it take to stop it? Investigative reporter Kyle Iboshi worked to find answers.
It is a complex problem that really requires a complex solution.
Here's the story.
In downtown Portland, glass repair crews work like first responders, dispatched from one scene to the next. The first call this morning is the corner of Southwest Pine and First Avenue, a place they've been before. Vandals have smashed the windows of the Japanese restaurant Kale 5 times in the past 3 years. Surveillance video shows criminals breaking inside, but the landlord isn't going to surrender.
We're not going to put bars on our windows and stuff like that. That's not going to happen.
And why not?
It's just not really who we are, you know, and I don't think it would be good for our customers. You know, this is a restaurant. I don't think anybody wants to sit in the restaurant that's boarded up.
A few doors down, the dispensary Sarah is boarded up.
And you can even still see all of the glass that's still around here and everything. It's like
Cora Burrows says smashed windows have become so common at the downtown store, workers keep a supply of plywood on hand. There's a patchwork of boards hiding broken glass up and down the street and around the block.
There's a lot of forgiveness, but I feel like that's been running out, especially with this. I mean, people are running out of money replacing the windows, they're running out of patience.
Reports of vandalism in Portland, including broken windows, have doubled from 6,000 cases in pre-pandemic 2019 to more than 12,000 last year. And the costs are staggering. The most recent FBI data suggests in 2021, vandals caused an estimated $18.9 million in property damage citywide, which presents some interesting questions. Among them, who is breaking the windows? It's tough to say. Only about 1 in 10 vandalism cases in Portland result in an arrest. Court records suggest of those arrested, many are repeat offenders, or people who break more than one window. Like Tyler Miller, who also goes by Tyler Jaramillo. The 29-year-old was busted in September for allegedly breaking windows at more than 6 different storefronts using a street sign pole. He's since been arrested for other crimes and is in jail while awaiting trial. Another question: what is the motive? The most obvious explanation: it's political. Following the death of George Floyd, downtown Portland was the center of racial justice protests, resulting in broken glass, fires, and property damage. Since then, anarchist and politically motivated groups have also smashed windows sporadically. But as for the rest, KGW asked for a list of all criminal mischief cases filed in Multnomah County last year. And what we found is, most broken window cases appear to be random incidents of destruction. The record showed defendants often self-reported mental health issues and admitted taking drugs, like meth. Several other broken window cases were connected to other crimes, like theft. These are break-ins. Which brings us to this question: what's going to stop it?
First of all, we're meeting with business owners and operators and helping them understand what strategies they can use. For example, lighting makes a big difference in terms of the frequency of vandalism to a storefront.
Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler hopes to clean things up by quickly removing graffiti, increasing police patrols, and by helping fix broken windows. So far, Prosper Portland has handed out roughly $1.5 million in grants to help small businesses that suffer damages. Other repairs will take longer. Multnomah County said it could be a year and a half until the design phase is complete to protect the county courthouse and justice center, both of which are still shielded by plywood after suffering damage during protests. Some businesses have already found a more permanent solution, like roll-down shutters, bars, and gates to help protect the glass.
It is a complex problem that really requires a complex solution.
Lori Drapella, criminal justice professor at Washington State University, Vancouver, explains there are fewer people living and working in downtown Portland these days, which means there aren't as many eyes and ears around.
But you have a lot of office complex space now where people are working from home. So they're not downtown taking lunch breaks, going from the Max or TriMet to the office. And they provide even natural surveillance areas and natural, if you will, what we call in the field guardianship.
Drapella says the community should focus on bringing people back downtown, especially on nights and weekends.
What we have really are people who have to reclaim the space.
Increased police presence and social services will help, she explains. But at the end of the day, it's less likely that criminals will break windows if people are around and watching.
You know, you can see some turnaround here that is not short-lived, that is more into the future and gets us back to the downtown Portland, we know and love.
Kyle Iboshi, KGW News.
Thanks, Kyle. So here's my take on all this. Downtown Portland is trying to come back. I took a walk there this afternoon in the rain, and yes, there are some buildings boarded up, but there are also new light displays in some of the downtown parks, giving them a real welcoming feel. You should know that some parts of the city feel as safe and as vibrant as ever. But as Kyle found out, there are still significant problems. Just ask folks in Old Town or in the city's east side central business district or in downtown. Now, 3 years ago this month, we were all starting to hear about a strange virus that was spreading around the world. I checked one of my scripts from back then, and it was a really big deal that the Oregon Health Authority was keeping secret the number of people it was monitoring for what we had just started calling COVID-19. I bring that up because, in my opinion, it was the beginning of the long slide for the city of Portland. Workers left, stores closed, and the freefall began. The riots made things worse, but they were already bad, especially downtown. And now, as we still work to shake off the effects of COVID, our city is still having trouble climbing out from the destructive behavior left behind. The combination of rampant drug use and untreated mental illness is, in my opinion, a real plague that threatens the future of Portland. Kyle's expert said bringing people into a vibrant downtown will help stop the window breaking. But what if we need to stop the window breaking before we can bring people into downtown and make it vibrant again? The bigger question is, how do we get help to the mentally ill who are acting out? How do we get them into treatment and off the street? I worry for the future of our city. I've talked with many who I respect who think it's a 50-50 chance whether Portland ever recovers. I hope they're wrong. And we'll be here to spotlight the good and the bad in an effort to help things get better. But the outcome is not certain. And the ongoing scourge of broken windows, well, that suggests we still have a long ways to go. Those are my opinion. What are yours? Do you agree or disagree? What do you think needs to be done differently? Send an email to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. All right, now we're going to switch things up a little bit. You know it's never good when Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino joins us on The Story. It means there is weather coming. Matt?
Why do I always get that introduction when I enter a room? It's never good when Matt shows up. No, I'm just kidding. But you're right. We've been talking about snow since last week, and we're still talking about it. The timeline hasn't really changed. The question is, why is this not the classic Portland snow setup I've been talking about on our other newscasts, and I'll explain why that is the case by showing you what the classic Portland snow setup is. Normally, when we're talking snow, like a good widespread snow or even ice storm, like we had last Valentine's Day, remember that? We have cold air in place. We've had east wind come out of the gorge, overtake the valley, maybe even overtake the coast. And so you've got the setup of deep cold air. And then to get a storm sneaking up, usually onto the central coast, that's the best setup for Portland snow. And that sends Pacific moisture riding in over the top. It's cold enough right on through the entire column of the air mass. So it's all just snow in the valley. Maybe the coast is rain like the central and southern coast, but everybody else just gets snow. That's the classic setup because it ensures that we're cold enough for the precipitation to be snow and not rain. This is not that. We've got strong onshore flow. There is no east wind. There is no Arctic air. So why are we still talking about snow? Because the air coming in from the north and west is really darn cold anyway. Now, the modifying factor here is this big thing out here we call the Pacific Ocean. It's relatively warm. The water there is 50 degrees-ish all year long. And so that modifies the lowest, the air that is in contact with it, the lowest elevation air. And that's why our climate in general is so mild here west of the Cascades, because of that moderating influence of the Pacific Ocean. But occasionally we'll get an air mass dropping on down from the north and from the west that has Arctic origins, like way up in Alaska. It's gotten a little bit warmer because it's been living over the ocean. But it's cold, and that's what we have right now. And so the temperatures are cold enough and getting cold enough to support snow all the way down to the valley floor, even though there is no east wind. Now, right now, it's just snow showers, but we'll see a more steady band of precipitation come in. It's up around the Haida Gwaii, formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands. That's dropping in after midnight tonight, and that's what's going to bring us our best chance for seeing steady snow. But already, look at this. We're dropping down into the 30s, and it's not clear out. I mean, we'll get in the 30s in the winter often, but usually when we do that, we have a clear sky or a east wind. That is not the case tonight, at least not a completely clear sky. And the temperatures will continue to plummet as we go into the overnight hour. So we are looking for that band of snow to roll on in after about midnight or so. I'm showing you Timberline right now, even though it's really grainy, because it's 19 degrees. There's been at least 8 inches of new snow up there. And boy, is it ever cold up aloft. Look at these temperatures up on Mount Hood. 16 at the top of the mile. It's already down to 26 at Govey, 19 at Timberline. So that's an indication of that moderating influence of the Pacific Ocean at the lowest elevations of our air mass. Up above that, it's almost Arctic, even though it's coming from the west and northwest, our air mass is. All right, our snowfall looks like about an inch for the Portland area, give or take. And so some places may only see a dusting and a few flakes. Other places may see as much as, say, 2 inches of snow for the valley floor. But elevation is key when we have these onshore flow snow events like we do right now. Once you get above about 500 feet, you get away from that warmer air that's been warmed and modified by the Pacific Ocean, and so you get more snow. 1 to 3 inches above 500 feet. That's basically halfway up the West Hills and then to the top. And then, of course, you go above that, and it's all snow. It's going to be a big-time powder day. Somebody, Pat, in Twitter, my Twitter feed said that tomorrow is, what do they put it? Valentine Day or Powentine. That's what it was, Powentine Day, because there's going to be a lot of great skiing on Mount Hood.
People are going to be in love with that snow.
You bet.
All right, thank you, Matt. The policy for Oregon State workers that lets fully remote workers live anywhere in America, well, that has taxpayers footing the bill for their return to our state, and it has a number of you fired up after our most recent story. It's Senate Bill 853 had its first public hearing last week, and that's why we are talking about it. The bill would force those living in places like New York and Florida to fly back to Oregon for meetings on their own dime. The policy of taxpayers paying, well, that was adopted by state managers during COVID. Some agencies like the Treasury are not offering that policy, but most of state government is. And last week during that public hearing, the powerful workers union, SEIU 503, said they are against the bill. Here's the executive director, Melissa Unger.
I think one thing that's really important is that the policy around remote and hybrid work is not a policy that is in our CBA. It is a policy the state created. Management created this policy, and then workers decided to follow the policy. And so currently there's workers who have decided to follow a remote work policy where they were told they were not expected to come into their office, and how have we spent on out-of-state travel? Has it been significant? Because I will tell you, our frontline workers can tell you lots of ways that the state could use their money better, and I am not sure that the money that we've spent on out-of-state travel is actually a huge problem. Do I think that there's headlines about it? I know that there's headlines about it. We read them, we got responses, and I agree, some of our members do not think that this is a good idea. And I'm not saying it's a great idea, but we do think that there's real problems in state government. I've spent the last week with our frontline state workers, and they are in crisis.
Now, I have to say, I was really tempted to give the union leader a pivot award, because that was a masterful pivot there to talk about going from talking about state employees paying for coming back to talking about what's all wrong with Oregon. So, interesting. But let's not get distracted on that. The dollars are not large, but the principle has many of you very angry. Kim left a message on our voicemail echoing a thought many of you shared.
I think remote workers should be in Oregon. They should be in the state where they're working. I don't understand why Yeah, I'm. They should be in Oregon.
Now, several of you do not like the idea that remote workers in other states are not paying Oregon income tax. And I checked with the Oregon Department of Revenue today. They tell me that those employees are only taxed by Oregon for the days they are physically in Oregon and working for the state. Otherwise, they would have to follow the laws, state tax laws of where they are living. For example, they would have to pay income tax in New York, but not in Florida. Sharon writes, "What also bothers me is about the out-of-state employees are being paid by Oregon taxpayers and are not paying Oregon income tax. So enjoying the pay from taxpayers but not contributing as a taxpayer." Mary is concerned as well. She wrote, "Travel expenses are one thing, but are these employees paying all state and local taxes in Oregon? If they're not, that is injustice. Travel costs are a drop in the bucket." Indeed, the travel costs for the two agencies that we've looked at, the Department of Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority, they total about $34,000. Now, that is tiny compared to their budgets, but it's not nothing. And there is another side to this, by the way. We're not just hearing from people who hate this. We're hearing from people who like the policy. Some of you are saying it's okay for taxpayers to fly remote workers back to Oregon for meetings. Diana, for example, argues it's an important policy to get the best workers.
I can assure you that with the trends in the current employment market, that if we as a state did not offer that, we are losing out on the best talent.
And she's not the only one who feels that way. Erin says she is a state employee. Her comment, "Please at least present this as part of a normal culture rather than distinct and questionable because it's a government employee that may or may not be directly funded by taxes." Doug called in with concerns for whether workers are being treated fairly.
On its face, this seems like a problematic issue, but the testimony from SEIU today pointed to something that we haven't heard before, which is that this was in fact the state policy created by state managers, and workers relied on that policy and made major life moves, and now they're having at least part of that rug pulled out from underneath them, and that sounds pretty unfair.
Finally, Don says the state is probably saving money by not having to pay for office space for remote workers, adding paying for them to travel here may actually be saving the state money in the long run. There may be some employees that have enough value that it's worth it for us to pay for their travel. Thanks to Dawn and all the rest of you who wrote in and called in. We appreciate your input. You help make the show unique, and your insights help the rest of us think about the issue, maybe consider it from a point of view we'd not considered before.
Still to come on the story. For months, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler's office has said they will release the locations of the large sanctioned homeless sites, and for months we've waited. But now, the location of at least one of those sites appears to be leaking from City Hall, and it's a place where homeless camping is already prominent.
Somewhat spacious and really easy access to, transit lines, things like that.
No nearby business owners would go on camera, but even people experiencing homelessness are not thrilled.
I don't like that. We've got too many idiots here already.
Where it is, and news of another possible location we're hearing about when the story returns.
Now to the homeless crisis. The city of Portland is moving forward with Mayor Ted Wheeler's plan that would ban homeless camping and instead create 6 large-scale sanctioned campsites. But ever since Wheeler announced this plan, the big question has been, where are those camps going to go? Blair Best reports the city appears to be considering locations where homeless camping is already prominent.
The site that appears to be under consideration is this parking lot off Southeast Gideon and 13th. It's in an area known as the Clinton Triangle, right in between train tracks and the fire marshal's office. It's one of the last underdeveloped areas in the Central East Side and could soon be home to 150 homeless people, all part of Mayor Ted Wheeler's aggressive plan to ban unsanctioned camping and build professionally managed camping sites instead. Recent changes to the city budget secured $27 million to build 3 of the 6 sites.
Half of what I've been hearing in the last few months is true, then we're all done anyway.
The city has not confirmed the site locations, but according to the mayor's public calendar, he was scheduled to work on a letter of intent connected to the Clinton Triangle location last month. According to the Oregonian, the city has letters of intent for 2 other site locations. Lily camps across the street from the site in question on the Central East Side.
I mean, everybody's got to go somewhere, but why here? This isn't a conducive neighborhood to being homeless.
I mean, depending on how many people they want to put there, somewhat spacious and really easy access to, transit lines, things like that.
Though some homeless people fear a mass encampment could hurt the area.
I don't like that. We've got too many idiots here already.
We walked into 5 different businesses in the area. All of the owners had a lot to say about the homeless crisis and the potential for a designated camping site here. Yet none of them felt comfortable going on camera and talking publicly about it for fear of backlash. None of the nearby business owners knew that their neighborhood was potentially being considered for the project. The mayor's office says they're preparing to meet with neighborhoods where the sites will be located to develop good neighbor agreements.
It makes me question why he doesn't focus his efforts somewhere that's, better placed, more useful. We don't need to push people together. I think people should still have the freedom to be where they want to be.
So you've been living on the street for a while. What is it that you think you would need in one of these designated camping sites?
I mean, I think it starts with somebody who actually cares.
Now, there have been reports that other locations are under consideration for these sites, like this parking lot that goes underneath the west side of the Morrison Bridge. Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. Still to come on The Story. Lawmakers in Olympia are considering a new bill that would make certain marijuana products far more expensive.
It's draconian. It doesn't make sense for the state of Washington.
And no surprise, dispensary owners are not happy. But advocates say it's a safety issue. And there's a, quote, emerging public health crisis that could get worse if nothing is done. Which products the bill targets, and a look at the differences in pot taxes between Oregon and Washington when The Story returns. Welcome back. When it comes to taxes on marijuana products in the Pacific Northwest, there is a huge difference between Oregon and Washington. Oregon charges a 17% tax for pot. Washington charges a pot tax of 37%. That's the highest in the continental U.S. And now some lawmakers in Olympia want to make it even higher, but only for certain products meant to get you really, really high. Supporters of the bill say high THC products have been linked to mental health disorders like psychosis or schizophrenia, but dispensary owners are not happy about this. Here's Maddie White from our sister station King in Seattle.
In Washington, you gotta pay the green if you want to smoke the green. Right now, there is a 37% excise tax on each cannabis product, but a new bill could increase that tax up to 65%, depending on the THC potency.
If we fail to act now to counter the emerging public health crisis created by high-potency cannabis products, we will soon have another epidemic on our hands.
Taxes are distributed back to the state.
To the Department of Health to contract for targeted public health messages and social marketing campaigns.
But pot shop operators hope this idea goes away like a puff of smoke.
I think would put retailers, growers, etc. out of business.
The bill would also put an age limit of 25 years old to buy high-potency THC products unless it's for medical use.
That's significant. That's a big portion of our customer base.
Beth Thomas is concerned more expensive weed will drive consumers back to the black market.
You can only pay so much. The cheaper option is going to be out on the street where it isn't tested or regulated.
Representative Davis pointing to a study suggesting high-potency THC use could lead to various health risks.
High-potency cannabis is uniquely correlated with the onset of psychotic disorder.
Khan's response?
There's always going to be isolated cases of abuse or overuse, people with more sensitivity than others. But this is an adult use industry, right? People should be able to make informed and intelligent decisions.
Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are you for or against the higher tax for high THC products? Let us know. Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Keep it right here. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Well, that's the end of a show. Remember, thanks for watching, and remember the story, our story that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow night.
This is